What's up, YouTube? Your girl is back with another video. I hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized during this time that we are dealing with the coronavirus. Since we have so much more time on our hands, now it's a good time as ever to learn how to heat up a skillet. So today's recipe will be covering seafood macaroni and cheese. Super simple, super delicious, and something for you guys to enjoy. So let's get into it. So things you will need is half and half. You're going to need some good butter, minced garlic, an onion. Here in this bowl, I grated some cheese, and I also have some cube cheese underneath. We have lobster claw meat, lobster tails, cooked shrimp, and crab meat. So I also have some more shredded cheese for the top and for our layering. So this is all the ingredients that you will need. So let's get to it. So you want to start off with some water for your noodles. Now, we always season our noodles when we make pasta because our noodles need to have flavor as well. So you're going to start off with water, salt, and then we're going to add some oil so our noodles won't clump up and stick together. So once that comes to a boil, you're gonna go ahead, you know this part, this is super easy. Pour the noodles in, and then we're gonna get started on our roux. So here I have butter and I have diced my onion. So I used about not even half of an onion. You don't want big chunks of onion in your macaroni and cheese. That's just too much, but you do want enough to give it some good flavor. So we have our onion going, and then we're going to go in with our minced garlic, and we're going to saute this until our onions are translucent. So once our onions are translucent and it has released all of those good flavors, we are going to get started with our roux. So all a roux is a thick sauce basically. So you're gonna add flour to your roux. Another word for roux is basically your cheese sauce. And what the flour does is thicken up, it's act as a thickening agent so that our cheese sauce is not watery, because we don't like watery mac and cheese. So you're gonna stir in your flour. Now, you want to be careful to not walk away from the pot at this point, because you only want to stir in until the flour is incorporated with your onions and garlic. You see how it absorbed most of the moisture that was in the pot. So we don't want this to brown. We're not making gravy. You only want to do this enough to incorporate the flour so that you don't have any lumps in your cheese sauce. So once you get to that point, I use the entire carton of half and half. I also am going to go back in with more half and half. So you're going to add that in, and then you're going to transfer over to a whisk. Now, what the whisk will do is make sure that everything is smooth. So you want to work out all of that flour and kind of spread it even, and then you will see that your half and half will start to kind of thicken up a little bit. And then that's when I decided that I needed to add more, because it was getting super thick too early. You don't want this stage to be super thick, because we still have to add our cheese. And if it's too thick, then your macaroni and cheese will be dry, and we don't need folks talking about you in the group chat. So you're just gonna stir and stir and stir until your half and half mixture is nice and smooth and you don't feel any lumps within your mixture. So you see how my half and half is still very loose as I'm whipping. This is the consistency that I'm looking for. So at this point, you're going to season. I started off with onion powder, some paprika, garlic powder, I'm very heavy-handed with the garlic powder, but since we have not only just the macaroni and cheese, we have seafood too. It's a good idea to use a good amount of garlic. And then I added the Badia complete seasoning. So that is it. We're going to incorporate our seasonings into our half and half and just make sure that everything is stirred in. So once your seasonings are well incorporated in your half and half, you want to slowly add your cheese. Now at this point, my stovetop is on medium low. You don't want to bring this to a boil because you don't want to scorch your cheese. That is going to be a disaster. So it's best to keep it low and go ahead and stir in your cheese and melt it down slowly. I forgot to mention, so the cheeses that I use, I have a smoked Gouda cheese, I have Colby Jack, I have pepper jack, and I have sharp cheddar. So again, you want to add your cheese slowly but surely. So once you see, the first batch has melted down pretty well, then you go ahead and add your others and stir it in. And it's going to take not ridiculously long, but it's going to take a while for especially your cheese chunks to melt down. So if you don't have a cheese grater, I highly suggest you just buy shredded cheese. It'll make your life easier. So we're going to add some more cheese. And this is just Colby Jack Colby Jack cheese. So as you can see, is the more cheese you add, the thicker the sauce becomes. So you don't want to be super heavy-handed with the flour. And then you also want to be generous with the amount of half and half that you use for this reason, because the cheese is also going to thicken up your roux. So this is the consistency that I'm going for. It's thick, but it's not too thick. So once it bakes in the oven, it's going to come to a great texture. So this is the final product of our cheese sauce. And now we are ready to go ahead and add our noodles. If you still find little small pieces of the cube cheese that's not melted down all the way, it's fine. Once it meets the oven will melt it down and do the rest of the work for us. So I strained my noodles and I went ahead and poured them into my cheese sauce. And then we're just going to mix it around and make sure that all of our noodles are stirred around in the sauce. When doing this step, you also want to be kind of light-handed. You don't want to ruin the noodles. So don't stir, too hard. Try and be as gentle as possible. You just want to make sure that your cheese and your noodles are incorporated. So now it's time to prep our seafood. So I didn't pre-cook any of the seafood. I melted some butter, and I will show you guys later what that is for. So I am seasoning all of my seafood meat with garlic powder, and then I will go behind with very, very lightly with Old Bay seasoning. You do not want to be heavy with any salt-based seasonings because cheese is naturally salty and so is seafood. So for this recipe, you do not want to be heavy-handed with any type of salt-based seasoning. Very, very lightly with the Old Bay. And I also didn't bother seasoning both sides. So in a casserole dish, we are going to layer our macaroni and cheese like we would a lasagna. So you start off with a nice layer of just the macaroni and cheese, and you want to spread it out and make sure it's, meets all four edges of your pan. And then we're going to go ahead and distribute our meat. So I started with our lobster claw meat, a few shrimps. You want to do this strategic. I don't know if it's the OCD in me, but I always want to make sure that when you have seafood macaroni and cheese, no matter where a person cuts at in the casserole, they're going to get a nice portion of the seafood mac and cheese. You can't serve it to anybody and they only get one shrimp and, a speck of lobster meat. You want to make sure wherever this is cut, that the seafood will be plentiful. So that's why we're also layering it. So I tried really hard to kind of evenly distribute everything out so that everyone got a chance to taste a little of everything. So you're going to spread your meat out, and then you are going to put a very thin layer of shredded cheese. And this is just a Monterey Jack and Colby Jack blend. You don't want this portion of cheese to be thick either. Just a very, very light coat. And then you're going to take your remaining pasta and you're going to spread it along all four sides to cover your first layer. It's low-key like a lasagna, but, lasagna meets mac and cheese. So after you spread, we're going to repeat the same process. You want to make sure you spread out some more meat. And even though this is the top, it will work out. So this is the real deal seafood mac and cheese, you guys. Every scoop is going to have lots and lots of seafood meat inside of it. So your lobster tails, if you have not watched my lobster tail video, you should. If you haven't, though, it is very important when cooking lobster tails that you dip it in butter prior to. And what this will prevent is the meat from being tough and dry. So any exposed seafood that we have on top, I just spread just a little bit of butter on top to prevent it from drying out and being very rubbery, because that's not what we're looking for here. So to keep it tender and juicy, you just apply a little bit of butter, and then we're going to go over the top with our cheese. And then this the same way. You don't want to put too much cheese on top of your seafood mac and cheese, because you don't want it a really thick layer of cheese. You want the seafood to be exposed, and you want to be able to see, pieces of it kind of sticking out for presentation purposes. So you don't want to pack the top of it with too much cheese, just enough to coat the top layer. So for our final touches, we're going to decorate this bad boy with our favorite food grass, parsley, and this just makes it really, really pretty. And then we're going to put it in the oven for 30 to 45 minutes on 375 degrees. I did not cook any of the seafood, but I promise you guys, everything inside of here will be nice, done, and tender by the time it's done. And 45 minutes later, here we are. So you see the seafood spoken out. And I would highly recommend waiting at least 15 to 20 minutes before cutting into macaroni and cheese. That way you give it time to set up. So this is what it looked like after 20 minutes of sitting out from being in the oven. As you notice, it is cheesy. The cheese sauce is not wet, but it's nowhere near dry. And then anywhere you cut, you see the crab meat or any other of the seafood sticking out. The lobster tails are on top. So that is the end of this recipe, you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you love this recipe, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Share with your friends. Tell a friend to tell a friend. And if you decide to make this recipe, please let me know how it goes down in the comments below. Thank you, guys. Enjoy. Okay, guys, so I'm gonna have my trusty taste tester taste our seafood mac and here, Courtney. Here's your seafood mac and cheese.
This is shrimp.
I know.
This is lobster.
Right here. And it got crab meat in it too. Taste it. How does it taste? It tastes good. There's Courtney's lobster. Yummy in my tummy. Yummy in my tummy.
Thanks, guys. Remember in this video.
And Courtney is going to enjoy.
No, my food.
Oh, not on her food. Her seafood mac and cheese. So, thank you.